Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Megan Mabry, and I am an Assistant Staff Specialist in the Grants Division at the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. I am joined today by Itzel Guzman and Danny Anderson, Grant Specialists with the Off-Road team. Today's webinar is specifically tailored to off-road equipment dealerships and will count as your training to meet the qualifications as an approved dealership at Bay Area Air Quality Management District. We will focus on the different types of grant opportunities, basic eligibility requirements you'll need to know for your customers, and specifically on our Off-Road Equipment Replacement Program, or ERP, including the dealership role, application assistance, and inspections. Please note that this webinar is being recorded. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items so you know how to participate in today's webinar. Here is a screenshot of the Zoom interface. You should see something that looks like this on your own computer desktop at the bottom of your screen. You are listening in using your computer speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, select the up arrow to the right of your microphone button, which will pop up a menu. Select the switch to phone option and enter in the dial-in information in your invite email to join by phone. Please be aware that you will not be able to unmute, use your video, or share your screen during today's presentation. Today's webinar is being recorded. You can find program fact sheets in the online application user guide for you to download on our website. The webinar recording and a copy of today's presentation will be posted on our website in a few days. You can also email us at grants@baaqmd.gov for copies as well. You may submit questions on today's presentation by typing in your questions in the chat section using the chat button and send it to the host listed as "Please send me your questions, Megan," or to everyone. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation so that we can collect them and answer all questions during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. We will only be able to answer questions during the webinar received through the chat and won't be taking live audio questions or calling on anyone who has a raised hand. Please be specific in your questions and mention the equipment type you're asking about, such as mobile agriculture, off-road equipment, stationary equipment, portable equipment, or cargo handling equipment, for example. In today's presentation, we will provide you with a high-level dealership training for the Air District Equipment Replacement Program, or ERP. We will start with some background on the Air District and Grants Division, and then dive deeper into the district's grant programs, followed by the Equipment Replacement Program for off-road equipment. We will follow with information about the general role of the dealer and required steps throughout the grant process, specifically the dealer's role in application assistance and inspections. At the end of the presentation, we will be available to answer any questions during a question and answer session. However, please feel free to send questions to our designated questions recipient throughout the process. We should be wrapping up in about 45 minutes. Now I would like to introduce Danny Anderson. Danny is a grant specialist in the off-road group.
Thanks, Megan, and good afternoon. My name is Danny, and I'm a grant specialist at the Air District. Here you can see our jurisdiction, the entirety of 7 Bay Area counties and about half of Solano and Sonoma counties. The Air District's mission is to ensure a healthy breathing environment. One way we do this is to provide grants to replace or upgrade equipment and vehicles, which reduces pollution by funding clear air technologies. The Air District prioritizes communities disproportionately impacted by air pollution. The input we get from these communities informs our outreach and the types of projects we fund. Here's a map showing some of the priority areas for grant funding. These areas are deemed low income and disadvantaged by the state Cal EnviroScreen initiative. They are shown here in blue, yellow, and green. Our priority areas also include the AB 617 communities of West Oakland, East Oakland, Richmond, San Pablo, and Bayview, Hunters Point, Southeast San Francisco. During this application period, a total of $90 million is available for grant funding, with different funding allocations on the slide. Like previous solicitations, this one will operate on a first-come, first-served basis. The deadline to submit your application is February 6th, 2025 at 5 p.m. Here are the types of projects that we're funding. We most commonly see equipment replacements. However, we also allow repower projects, equipment conversion projects, and infrastructure as an add-on to support zero-emission equipment purchased through this program. Standalone infrastructure projects not linked to a specific equipment are not currently eligible for funding. For the off-road category, we can fund different types of diesel and gas, mobile, and portable equipment. Examples include loaders, dozers, excavators, scrapers, forklifts with less than or equal to 8,000 pounds lift capacity, cargo handling equipment, transportation refrigeration units, ground support equipment, portable generators, concrete pumps, and wood chippers. Zero emission replacement projects are highly encouraged, and funding is also available for the infrastructure needed to support all electric equipment. For all projects, funding is available to cover up to 80 to 85% of eligible project costs, depending on the project type. The most common project is equipment replacement, which generally can fund up to 80%. Looking now at the agricultural category, we can fund different types of diesel and gas-powered mobile, portable, and stationary equipment that operates at least 75% of the time in the Bay Area. Examples include tractors, tractor loaders, wheel loaders, forklifts, again, with less than or equal to 8,000 pound lift capacity, portable generators, and water pumps greater than 25 horsepower operating in agricultural operations. The Air District's mobile agricultural zero emission equipment replacement category is to encourage ag equipment transition to zero emission. Here are some nuances specific to stationary and portable engines. This equipment must meet the horsepower, location, usage, and tier characteristics listed on this slide. To fund any engine older than a Tier 3, the engine must either be sized between 25 and 50 horsepower, or it must be remotely located or be an emergency standby engine. Diesel engines 50 horsepower and greater must be registered with the Air District, and portable engines 50 horsepower and greater must be registered with PERP to be eligible for funding. Many stationary engines are subject to the Stationary Diesel Engine Air Toxic Control Measure, or ATCM. For these engines, the term of the project may be as little as 1 to 3 years, and the project must be complete with the engine installed and operational for at least 1 year before the compliance date. Today's training is specifically focused on the equipment replacement program, which is mainly funded by the Carl Moyer, Farmer, and Community Health Protection programs. These projects are for equipment that will be replaced sooner compared than through normal attrition or due to any compliance requirements. Here are some basic eligibility requirements for the off-road and agricultural equipment categories. Applicants must provide documents to show at least 2 years of ownership and usage for the equipment they want to replace. Applicants must have owned and operated the equipment in the Bay Area at least 75% of the time. Existing diesel equipment must have a Tier 0 through Tier 3 engine, and diesel engines must be greater than or equal to 25 horsepower. Existing large spark ignition or gas-powered equipment must also be at least 25 horsepower and be replaced with the cleanest available standard. Eligible fleets must be in compliance with all applicable laws and regulations. Finally, the existing equipment must be destroyed and scrapped within 60 days of delivery of the new equipment to your customer. This is an important restriction for projects that are subject to regulations, that is, non-agricultural projects. These projects must be located within one of the Bay Area District's priority areas in order to qualify for the program. Priority areas, yellow, blue, and green areas on this map, and also the areas of Oakland, Richmond, San Pablo, and Bayview, Hunters Point, southeast San Francisco. In order to certify that a project is in a qualifying location, for non-ag projects, you must fill out a geographic eligible form. A link to the mapping tool is available in these slides, which you'll be able to download within the next few days. You can use this mapping tool to determine whether or not a potential project is geographically eligible. To expand on the compliance requirement, to receive funding, fleets and equipment cannot have any outstanding air district violations and must be in full compliance with all applicable air quality regulations. This includes being registered with CARB and/or the Air District if required in regulation. The existing equipment must also have at least 1 to 3 years before any compliance deadlines from the California Air Resources Board or Air District, and documentation of compliance must be provided as part of the application. Funding cannot be used to bring equipment into compliance, and funded equipment cannot be used towards compliance requirements while under contract. Typical off-road equipment regulations might include the off-road diesel regulation, the large spark ignition fleet regulation, or LSI regulation, port cargo handling regulation, the portable and stationary engine regulations, such as PERP and air toxic control measure, and the statewide truck and bus regulation. This is not a complete list. Also, the Air District is not the regulatory agency responsible for these regulations. Please have your customers contact CARB if they are unsure what regulation applies to their fleet and equipment. Grant funding is only available to cover eligible project costs. This includes the base cost of the new equipment and may include essential features, that is, items needed on the replacement so it can do the same work as the existing equipment. For example, a loader attachment and four-wheel drive. Sales tax and freight costs are also eligible. If an applicant is proposing to replace baseline equipment with zero-emission equipment, they may also be eligible for funding for the associated charging infrastructure. We cannot reimburse for premium additions, extended warranties, docking fees, or non-essential upgraded optional items. These costs are the responsibility of the applicant. Please note, all upgrades and attachments on the replacement equipment must be itemized and accurately reflected on the equipment quote, even when the additional items are not eligible for reimbursement. The typical standard allows for horsepower increases above the rating of equipment. Any increase within 25% of the existing engine horsepower is allowed. Increases of 25 to 35% above existing can be funded, as long as you certify that there are no comparable units within the 25% range available that can perform the same function as the existing equipment. Otherwise, the applicant may choose to pay for the cost difference between an available new unit within the 25% range and a larger unit. Increases above 35% are allowed in certain situations, but the customer must pay for an increase that large. Zero emission replacements above 25% are permitted with no restrictions. For infrastructure funding, eligible projects include battery charging, hydrogen fueling, stationary ag pump electrification, shore power, or other zero-emission infrastructure projects on a case-by-case basis. Funding is available to cover up to 50% of eligible project costs, with potentially higher funding amounts available for projects located at sensitive receptor locations or projects powered by solar or wind. And that's all for me for now. So I'll hand it over to Itzel to talk you through the grants process and the dealership role.
Thanks, Danny. So as the dealer, you can reach out to any one of our team members to complete a cost effectiveness request form before beginning an application with a customer. So this consists of sending details of potential equipment to be replaced, to receive an estimate of funding amounts and contract terms. So this way your customer gets a good idea on whether a piece of equipment is a good candidate for the program before starting an application. And the cost effectiveness of a potential project is based on many factors, some of which are the age and horsepower of the old equipment and cost and horsepower of the proposed new equipment, as well as annual usage. So we strongly recommend sending us this form for all project types, but especially for regulated projects. And when doing so, please also send any applicable DORS documents to best determine eligibility. And here's what you can expect from the grant process overall from start to finish. So in step 1, the applicant works with an approved dealer to submit an application. District staff review the application and then request any additional information required to determine eligibility. And if deemed eligible, staff notify the applicant and the dealer about the preliminary funding approval. Then the district or dealer does inspection of the existing equipment. In step 2, when the pre-inspection is approved, a contract is signed by the applicant and the air district. The air district then authorizes the new equipment to be purchased. And so at this point, it's very important to remember that no equipment can be ordered before the contract has been signed. You must wait for the district's permission before the new equipment can be purchased. In step 3, once the dealer is in possession of the new equipment, the dealer or district will inspect the new equipment. The equipment may be delivered to the customer only after the district reviews and approves the inspection and gives permission. Then in step 4, the dealer must send the old equipment to a dismantler for destruction within 60 days of the customer taking possession of the new piece of equipment. The dismantler then destroys the equipment and district staff performs a destruction inspection to release it for scrapping. And at that point, the dealer works with the grantee to prepare a payment package for the district's review. And please note that all payments are made directly to the grantee and are sent in the form of a physical check. And next, we'll go over the dealer role throughout this grant process. So much of the dealer role occurs before a project is approved for funding, primarily during the application stages. The contracted dealers are expected to provide the customer with accurate program information and guidance. And dealers are also assist their customers with online registration and application in the grants portal, ensuring that all the required documents are included in that initial submittal. Upon review of the application, district staff will correspond with both the customer and the dealer to gather any additional information necessary to determine eligibility. Although dealers are expected to assist the customers with the application process, they're not allowed to submit applications on the customer's behalf. And the customer or applicant will must submit the application in the Carl Moyer portal. When a project has been approved for funding, the dealer assists with a few more tasks, primarily with inspections. For any unregulated equipment, the dealer is asked to do the pre-inspection of the baseline equipment for projects such as ag. However, for regulated equipment, the district will do the pre-inspection. After getting district permission, the dealer will complete the sale and procure the new equipment and help arrange for any applicable installations, such as charging stations. Upon receipt of the new equipment, the dealer will coordinate with the air district to schedule a post-inspection and inspect the new equipment. The dealer will then assist in the destruction inspection of the baseline equipment as well and collect documentation of that destruction. And finally, the dealer will help the applicant, or at this point, the grantee, to prepare the package for reimbursement, which includes equipment invoices, salvage yard receipt, and signatures. And lastly, please note that dealers are subject to audit inspection by the Air District or California Air Resources Board. Now moving on to application assistance. The application is completed through our Carl Moyer application portal listed on this slide. And for each unit in an application, we require the following documents. Number 1, ownership documents demonstrating that the customer has owned the equipment for at least 2 years. 2 is usage documentation for the last 2 years, showing that the equipment is in operational condition. And this can include things like hour meter readings, maintenance, service, or repair records, and must be linked to that piece of equipment. For these items 1 and 2, other forms of documentation may be approved on a case-by-case basis. Number 3 is current general liability insurance. Number 4, only applicable to customers subject to the CARB off-road or LSI fleet regulation. We will need 3 compliance documents through the CARB door system. Number 5 is a quote and manufacturer spec sheet for the replacement equipment, and the quote must be current, itemized, and have the sales tax percentage listed. Purchase orders or sales orders cannot be accepted. And we also highly recommend providing spec sheets or other documents for the old baseline equipment, confirming the model year and horsepower rating. Number 6 will be an executive order, which shows the CARB or EPA certification. And lastly is the signed Air District Regulatory Compliance Statement. And please refer to the vendor guide that we will send out for these documents. Regarding the new equipment quotes and itemization, here's a simplified example of how quotes should be itemized. It's important to add all components, features, or attachments as separate line items on the quote and include whether they have an additional cost or are part of the base unit price, even when the items aren't eligible for reimbursement. In this example, we have the base tractor cost of $73,000 and a cab listed as a separate line item with no extra costs. The note indicates that the tractor only comes in a cab configuration and the baseline was equipped for the cab, which is useful for determining like-for-like eligibility. We also see a loader and loader arm options with additional costs, and the notes indicate that the baseline was equipped with a loader. So we'll consider the loader and attachment arm to be eligible costs as well as tax on these applicable items. And highlighted in red is an item that was not on the baseline and the district would consider ineligible. So the full cost of this light kit would be at the customer's expense. The description in the notes here can be reflected either on the quote, in an email, or document outlining the costs. This means that items like blade attachments, wheel weights, drawbar, clevis, and other essential parts are eligible for reimbursement as long as you provide justification and an explanation why they're needed. So you must demonstrate that the proposed items are essential to ensure the replacement equipment can perform the same function as the baseline. And also please make sure to itemize the cost of freight, which is also eligible. And in order to make all this work, we need to get clear and direct information from you. So keep in mind that we'll need to hear a good description of what the baseline does. When you build a piece of equipment and select which components are needed, what considerations are taken into account. The work that the baseline does, along with the terrain it works on, if applicable, should all be communicated to us so we can justify the costs of the components that are itemized in the quotes. And we'll also need your commitment that you'll clearly mark and itemize ineligible costs like upgrades that the customer wants. And this slide focuses on the doors compliance document that we mentioned, which is only applicable to regulated equipment. And here are which focuses on the 3 compliance documents from the door system. The screenshots you see on the screen outline the sections in this door system where you can locate the compliance snapshot, full fleet list, and funded vehicle list, which is the list of previously funded equipment through the Carl Moyer program. But if you have any questions about doors compliance or need further assistance regarding doors, please call their hotline directly. And I'll now go over the dealer's role in the inspection process. Dealers are key in coordinating inspections, showing equipment to the district staff, and in some cases doing the inspections themselves. So the 3 inspections for each project are Pre-inspection, which is done prior to project approval and it intended to verify the provided information and equipment operability. Then we have the post-inspection, which is done after purchase of the new equipment and prior to release to the customer. And this is intended to verify replacement equipment information and operability as well. And lastly, we have the destruction inspection done after the baseline equipment has been destroyed, but prior to full scrappage, and or being recycled. And this is to ensure that the baseline equipment is properly destroyed per district requirements. This destruction inspection must be done before the grant can be paid out. Most inspections are completed by district staff, either in person or virtually. And as mentioned previously, dealers typically perform the pre-inspection for unregulated equipment. This pre-inspection process includes taking date-stamped photos of the baseline equipment, engine, and hour meter. The dealer will also fill out a provided inspection form and denote equipment operability. The photos and completed form are then provided to the district for review. And here it's important to note to take many photos at various angles to clearly show the equipment and to show their serial numbers and locations on the baseline equipment, because this will help staff identify and verify the equipment serial numbers after it's been destroyed. And again, all other inspections are completed by the district. So district-led inspections may be done two ways, in person or virtually. Virtual inspections are done through a live streamed video device, typically a smartphone or tablet. And so prior to the virtual inspection, the dealer or applicant will take date-stamped photos of the equipment and provide them to district staff for review, along with a signed affidavit form stating that the provided photos are accurate and true of the representation of the new equipment. District staff will review the photos and schedule the video call with the applicant or dealer. Then district staff will review the equipment via video to ensure it matches the photos and finalize the inspection form. For any in-person inspections, no photos or signed affidavits are required. For these, district staff will coordinate with the applicant or dealer to schedule the inspection at the equipment site. The purpose of the destruction inspection is to ensure the baseline equipment is destroyed in accordance with the Carl Moyer requirements. The destruction must be performed to ensure that the baseline equipment is inoperable and unrepairable. This slide lists the specific requirements for that destruction, and these requirements will be sent to the customer and dealer upon release of the new equipment to the customer. And district staff will be guiding you as a dealer and the project applicant throughout the entirety of this grant process, so you'll receive this information later. Keep in mind, it's very important that the equipment and engine serial numbers are still visible on the destroyed equipment at the time of a destruction inspection. Here's an example of a destroyed equipment and engine. The top right shows the required irregularly shaped 3-inch hole in the engine block, and below it shows a completely severed frame. And I'd like to make a special announcement about replacing large spark ignition forklifts, that is propane, LPG, gasoline, etc. So forklift vendors, please be advised that new zero emission forklift rule was adopted by CARB in September 2024, and the regulation will be effective on January 1st, 2025. And this means that your customers for these types of forklifts may have significantly decreased opportunity to qualify for this type of replacement funding, depending on fleet equipment, primary function, model year, and forklift class, either class 4 or class 5. For example, here are the upcoming model year phase out scheduled compliance dates for both class 4 and class 5 forklifts, rated capacity of 12,000 pounds or less. Phase out means to remove an LSI forklift from fleet service. Some exemptions or an alternative phase-out schedule may apply for agricultural operation fleets, and some fleets may be eligible for a phase-out percentage cap to assist with achieving the compliance dates. And keep in mind that this doesn't apply to diesel forklifts, which are already limited by the CARB off-road diesel regulation. And I'd also want to call attention to the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust, or what we call VW program, which is a separate program focused on heavy lift forklifts, among other zero emission freight and marine equipment. And so feel free to contact us for more information about that program. Now that we've covered the dealer role and recent changes, we'll discuss the steps to becoming an approved dealer. So first, interested dealers are required to watch today's training and review the entirety of the Air District Dealer Summary Guide, which outlines all the steps for the dealer in detail. A link to today's training will be available upon request for interested dealers who were unable to attend today. Second, after the dealer completes the training and reviews the guides, district staff provide the dealer with the training certification form to sign. And third, once we received that signed form, you can notify us that you want to enter into contract to participate in the program. And only one agreement or contract per dealership is necessary if several locations will participate in the program, but we will need each location's address and contact information to be listed on that contract. However, in the case of franchise dealerships under different owners, each location will require its own contract. And so we'll need the signatory information, dealership location, and contact details to prepare the contracts. And fourth, the dealership must also provide the California business license for the past 2 years. Then our business office will provide the dealership with the contract and instructions to sign. And once the contract is fully executed, meaning it's signed by all the parties, the dealership will be listed on the district website as an approved dealer that potential applicants can work with. And here are a few additional resources, including the links to the California Core website, CARB Off-Road Zone, and contact information to the CARB Diesel Hotline, background information on Core, and the VW program that supports heavy lift forklifts, among other zero emission projects. And finally, here are links to our program website, as well as the contact information for staff members who lead these programs. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions regarding any of these programs. So that concludes today's dealer training. And we'll now take a couple minutes to give you a chance to submit any questions. Feel free to submit the questions using the chat button if you haven't already done so. But in the meantime, we'll keep the contact slide up. And so we'll be back with questions. But thanks everyone for tuning in.
All right, everybody. We have a couple questions that just came in. So I will answer this first one. And so the first question is, I have a customer that operates their ag backhoe at many different locations. How do they demonstrate that they're operating inside the Bay Area at least 75% of the time? Good question. So applicants must provide a complete list of all the addresses or locations where the equipment operates. That includes, we'll also need a percentage of usage at each of those locations and some sort of explanation on how the percentage was determined. And then for the second question, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Danny. This is a question about forklifts. So the question says, can a customer qualify for funding of a zero emission forklift if the horsepower is less than 25 horsepower? So the answer is yes. New electric motors and equipment that are rated less than 25 horsepower are eligible for funding, provided it can serve the same function as the original equipment that is 25 horsepower or greater. So the project would also have to be cost effective to fund and is subject to the CARB zero emission forklift regulation that we touched on.
Great, a couple more here. Okay, let's see. All right, third question. If a project is not fully cost effective at the 80% funding amount, what is the lowest grant award amount that a customer can receive and still be eligible for funding? So yes, for this current solicitation, the minimum or eligible award amount is $20,000. The Air District will deny projects with an eligible award amount less than $20,000. So unless the project is within a priority area or a zero emission technology is being funded. So there is some flexibility there as well. Okay, Itzel, do we have one or two more, right?
Yeah, another question is, can an applicant submit an application for more than one unit in an application? So the answer is yes. In fact, we encourage you to submit all units in an application. The only time that we would recommend submitting two separate applications is if a customer is working with two separate vendors. So an application can be submitted for the units under each vendor.
Great, thank you. Okay, looks like we have one more so far. So next question, for the forklift funding, would customers be eligible to apply for replacement funding if they'll be regulated by the zero emission forklift regulation that CARB recently passed? Additionally, this regulation requirements for phasing out equipment doesn't go into effect for a few years or several years. So I assume this shouldn't be an issue, but wanted to get confirmation. So yes, as we discussed earlier a bit today on one of the slides for the new forklift rule, yes, customers can still apply for replacement funding, but due to how the new regulation is, we first recommend that you reach out to us, a staff specialist, as soon as possible, so that we can work with you to determine the customer's eligibility. So feel free to email myself here or Jessica DePrimo, and we'll get that answer or that information back to you by one of our specialists or myself. Okay. That looks like all the questions for now. So unless anything else comes in, want to appreciate everybody for joining us today for the equipment replacement program vendor training. We'll be in contact with you to let you know where we're going to be posting the recording. We also have copies of this recording available, copies of the slides. We did send out some updated fact sheets for this new funding solicitation, the updated guidance documents for dealerships. So if you didn't receive that, please let us know. We have all of the guidance documents to help you out. And we want to thank you for joining today, and thank you for assisting with us, the applicants, on getting some cleaner equipment.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.